everyone, and welcome to a brand new breakdown series for Critical Role's new game, Candela Obscura. There's spooky spirits, weird phenomena, and ancient secrets.
Secrets at the outset. I like it.
In case you've been stuck in the Pharos Vault for the last few weeks, Candela Obscura is the new game from Darrington Press, which utilizes the Illuminated Worlds game system that was teased a month ago. It is a dramatic departure from the usual fantasy content and instead delves into the world of the paranormal. So get out your bleed detector and let's jump in. The episode kicks off with Lightkeeper, Talas, and Jaffe introducing us to the events for today's episode, and then Matt gives us a quick rundown on the lore of the city of Newfair, a city located in the northern reaches of the country of Hale, which is recovering from the effects of a 6-year war that ended just 3 years ago, thanks to the invention and innovation of electricity. The city is built on top of Old Fair, where all kinds of mysteries and horrors wait to be uncovered. If you want a deep dive into the lore of the world, I did a whole video on that, which you can find in the cards. A new show means we are treated to a brand new intro, which I found to be pretty gross. Ugh. We begin in the Steel following August, or Auggie James, played by Ashley Johnson.
I'm 19 years old. I was an orphan, dropped off at McManigan's, Saint Manigan's lodging house for children, and been there my whole life, working the streets. Yeah, you need something, you call me.
Great. And what do you look like you're darting from the rain in the middle of the storm?
Just a little scrappy, you know, clothes that don't really fit, messy hair, hat dirty, freckles.
In Candela Obscura, the players play roles, which also have specializations. Auggie is a slink role with the criminal specialization. The specialization is kind of like the subclass. Auggie heads to the apartment of a friend, an elderly retired foreman, Donald Kinzel, who Auggie visits often because no one else seems to check in with him much. Donald's apartment is very modest and run down, and it's clear that he has worked a long and hard life. Auggie shares his aspiration with Donald to one day become the mayor, feeling like he would be good at it. And I mean, yeah, we all know that Ashley plays some of the greatest leaders in Critical Role.
Think of me, Gail, the current president of whatever.
As they are talking, Donald adds some more charcoal to the furnace, or maybe it isn't charcoal because...
There is a massive explosion in the chamber as the chunk of odd, almost obsidian-like charcoal that he thrusts into this detonates in this blast of bright blue energy. As it explodes outward, you feel this impact, this force blast into your body and chest, and you feel yourself thrown back out of your body. You suddenly see the back of you, your head, as you begin to tumble backward, your hat tumbling off, your eyes vacant, as you see your body somewhat translucent, faintly blue.
Auggie's spirit whooshes back into his body, and before he passes out, he sees Donald's spirit leaving his body, and a dark shadow leaving the smoking remains of the furnace. Dun dun dun! Leaving that scene, we move to Briar Green, a parks district of Newfair, to the Briarbank College, and we meet Dr. Howard Margrave, played by Robbie Daymond.
As per usual, Howard is buried in books and papers. He has a grim look on his face. Consternation, working through whatever puzzles in front of him. And even though it's late in the evening, he's dressed as if it's the first thing in the morning. Astutely appointed, tall hat. And he's leafing through papers, just sort of really trying to work out what's in front of him.
Howard is a professor, a specialty of the scholar role. While he is working, Howard is interrupted by Professor Errol Dennings, who asks if he is planning on sleeping in his office again, saying that he should get out a little more, and invites him out for some drinks with himself and some of the other professors. Howard agrees to go for a drink, but some other time, and Dennings leaves, somewhat irritated. Howard is then visited by another man who delivers a message from Candela, as there has been another phenomenon. The meeting is with the Lightkeeper at a diner. We then move over to the bedroom of Arlo Black, played by Laura Bailey.
I'm sitting in my bedroom in front of the vanity. She's been dressed for the day and is staring into the mirror. Completely silent. Every once in a while her eyes will drift to the side and bring it back and stare at herself again. Not saying anything.
Arlo is a medium, a specialty of the weird role, which I think Laura portrayed very well throughout this episode. She receives the same message as Howard. Candela has requested her presence. Arlo informs Mr. Telbrook, likely a servant of some kind, that she's out for the evening and to tell her mother. And lastly, we head towards the sight unseen bar and club in Red Lamp, the entertainment district of the city, where you can find pretty much any form of entertainment. And we meet the manager of the bar, Charlotte Eaves, played by Anjuli Bhimani.
And I'm surveying all manner of humanity in the room. Some who perhaps it's their first time in the Red Lamp, and some who are using this place as an alibi, because they know that I have a particular reputation that somehow smooths over certain transgressions.
Charlotte, who is a face roll with the specialty of magician, receives the same message as the others, telling her to meet the Lightkeeper at the diner. In the Candela Obscura Quick Start Guide that was released on the Darrington Press website, you can get it for free, it has all of the pre-generated characters, and you can actually see the abilities that the characters for this game have, which is really helpful if you sort of want to follow along and learn more about their abilities. We head back to Auggie, who wakes up, holy shit, to find himself surrounded by 6 figures inside Donald's apartment. These folks are investigators from the OUP, the Office of Unexplained Phenomena, a underfunded and small department of the Periphery, which is the police force of New Fair. It has a reputation for corruption and violence. One of the OUP members, Field Officer Aaron Weimar, questions Auggie about what happened, who basically just tells the truth. The OUP is determined to keep the existence of supernatural phenomena a secret from the local populace, which we play out here when Officer Weimar tells Auggie that this was just the result of a fungal contamination.
You are lucky to be alive, but it was just a mundane accident.
They tell Auggie that Donald's body has been taken to the morgue and he is shown out of the room. Auggie, not knowing where else to go, goes to see Charlotte. However, partway there, he realizes that he is being followed by a person in their mid-50s with brown skin, thick locks, and a heavily scarred face with a cloudy white eye. We later learn that this is Lightkeeper Alexandra Elise O'Neill.
Don't trust the OUP. They're not looking out for you or your friend, whatever the hell happened up there.
Alexandra explains that they investigate unusual incidents along with some colleagues. They convince Auggie to come to a meeting at a diner, the Blue Derby Diner, to see if he'd like to join up too. This diner is located in South Suffolk, a district of poor and marginalised folks built directly under the affluent homes of the Eaves, which are directly above. In a back room of the diner is a round table under a bare flickering light bulb, and the rest of the characters are there waiting, seated around it. Alexandra introduces Auggie as being present at this latest phenomenon, and all the introductions are made. Charlotte introduces herself as if she's never met Auggie, but she later reveals that she and Auggie already know each other and that she kept it a secret from the Lightkeeper because she didn't want their prior connection to mean that they would not be able to work together. It seems that she is somewhat protective of Auggie and has known him since he was 10. The Lightkeeper explains to Auggie and us, the audience, that there are supernatural phenomenon kept behind a barrier between this realm and other realms, and this barrier is called the flare. At the places where the flare becomes weak, called thinnings, a phenomenon can come into the world and change and corrupt it. When this phenomenon, or magic, that's magic with a K, enters the world, it leaves behind a force called bleed, which is very dangerous. What Auggie saw was an example of this kind of phenomenon coming through a thinning. Alexandra pulls out some kind of clockwork device and activates it.
This energy begins to crackle, and you didn't notice until now, but there is this faint vibration on the front of your coat. And glancing down, you can see this black, almost like an oily substance, but it's translucent. It's present, but not at the same time. This
substance on his coat is the residue of the bleed, and Charlotte uses another mechanical device with a vial and pulls the bleed residue into the device. As she is doing so, Arlo comes over to examine it, touching it with her gloved hand to see if it is familiar. However, when we get our first test roll of the day, where you roll a dice pool of d6s and then count the number of successes, she doesn't get any, and
I feel it almost in the hand that had already felt cold, and it travels up my arm and hits my chest for a moment. And I look up, and all of the things that have been on the periphery sort of drift into focus really fast. And I'll close my eyes and see if I can push it back.
I think this mention of things that have been in the periphery coming into focus is directly in relation to Arlo being a medium, able to see and hear spirits from beyond the flare. Alexandra goes on to explain that they are members of Candela Obscura, a secret organization who works to protect people from and wants to learn more about the phenomenon that comes through the flare. Auggie agrees to join up and receives a pin of the Candela Obscura, now available in the Critical Role merch shop, and the group join hands to officially become a circle.
And it is within my esteem and authority of Candela Obscura to forge this circle. The circle of... And what are you naming your circle? What have you decided previously?
The circle of the vassal and the veil.
The circle of the vassal and the veil. At this point, you watch as she reaches into a small, like a metallic compact almost, pulls it open, and takes this like, almost like iron filing type material, and tosses it out in the air. As it does, it ignites in a blue flame, and the symbol in the center of the table glows for a moment. And for a brief instant, there is almost like a shared lasso of warmth that goes through the arms. You feel almost like you're holding every hand in this circle for but a moment. It tingles. You feel the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and then it's gone.
A group of adventurers in this game is called a circle, and the way that this game works is that instead of each character leveling up individually, the entire group, or circle, levels up. This is very similar to other games, including Blades in the Dark, which was a heavy influence for this game. At the end of every assignment, the group answers a number of questions, and if they satisfy a certain number of requirements, the circle advances or levels up and gains access to new resources and abilities. And we see this in action at the end of the episode. I'm really glad that they kept that part in so that we could see some of these mechanics play out. Alexandra encourages them to set out immediately to investigate before any evidence disappears or is taken by the OUP, and she heads off, leaving the group to decide on their first move. Auggie explains to the group what happened with Donald, and they ask some clarifying questions that Howard shows a little more of his charisma.
Are you familiar with the term hypothesis? Do you know it?
Yeah.
Great. It's like I'll help you, but obviously you know it. It's like an educated guess before you have all the information.
Did you need some help pulling that stick out of your ass?
Oh.
It is very fun watching Robbie play Howard. I'm hoping that he'll get a little bit more of a spotlight next episode. I feel like we didn't get to see him as much this episode. Auggie makes a focus test to try and recall the details of the room, of Donald's room, and if there was anything unusual, but rolls so poorly and can't recall very much and gets so anxious and stressed that they have a panic attack and have to take a brain mark, which is one form of damage that you can take in the game, with the others being bleed and body. They decide to head to the scene of the event to investigate further, stepping out into the rain.
Distant rumble of thunder crackling as the storm pulls overhead. You leave the red lamp.
For you to hold. For me. Thank you.
Arriving at the building, they head up the fire escape to the 3rd floor and find an OUP officer sitting outside the apartment. Charlotte approaches him, asking for help finding a friend's apartment in order to distract him, a little bit of like a, ooh, please help me, officer, kind of a shtick. And with a successful sway roll, he sets off to help her. The others head to the apartment and show themselves in. Luckily, the inside is empty, but it's also dim and cold as the strange ice is slowly melting. Arlo uses a bleed detector located in her watch and holds it toward the furnace. She finds that the OUP has cleared the area of bleed already, although there are still indicators showing its earlier presence, with the heaviest residue being at the site where the furnace was before it was destroyed. As she's examining the site, the temperature begins to drop and a faint blue light begins to glow, and a ghostly figure appears, the ghostly figure of Auggie's friend, Donald Kinzel.
Where am I? Why is it so cold?
What do you see, sir?
Turns towards you and you can see those black sockets, the emptiness behind them. They almost seem to widen when they meet your direction. You're so warm.
Meanwhile, Charlotte tells the OUP officer that she actually got the wrong address, but she convinces him to meet her at the site unseen for a drink later. He heads off there and she rushes upstairs to meet the others. Back in the room, Donald keeps reaching towards Arlo, but Auggie speaks to him and he backs off. Auggie asks what he put in the fire, and Donald says he bought fuel from the scavengers, from someone called Layla, a name that Auggie recognizes. And then he comes for Auggie, who backs away and hides behind some furniture, taking some damage from the shards of ice. Arlo uses one of her abilities, Let Them In, which allows you to gain additional information about a source that harmed you with bleed, and she removes her glove to do so.
When I remove my glove, you'll see that my hand is not what you would expect. It is a gray in color. My nails have turned black. The skin is cracked along the hand and along my forearm. You'll see just scratch marks, deep gashes that look old, but not healed.
And as you focus on that, you also watch as her eyes go white for a moment. You feel this wave of emotion and a buzzing of energy cascading in intensity until it bursts. And it's not connected to the spirit. It's connected to something else. Freed. For a split second, you see something dark and smooth with carvings in it, like an art piece or a capsule before this release, and something shadow-like that is gone.
We later learned that this injury or effect or whatever it is from a run-in with something? Although Arlo sort of trails off before giving more details. With that new information in hand, Arlo sets a small fire to draw Donald toward it, and they rush out of the room, leaving the spirit behind. Howard writes a brief message to inform Alexandra of the spirit's presence so that it can potentially be dealt with or guarded, and the group set off to find Layla. Layla is another orphan like Auggie, although a few years older. They spend a lot of time in the Clara house in South Suffolk, which is a soup kitchen. And speaking of soup, good soup, you can get exclusive behind-the-scenes soup, that segue work, by signing up to my Patreon for a free 7-day trial. I post updates on what I'm working on there, you can get early access to videos, and I do a monthly patron-only live stream. Plus, while I'm on the shameless self-plug train, I am thrilled to have been selected to take part in the Twitch ANZ Pride campaign, hence the kind of rainbow look today. And I have a ton of fun streams planned, including a charity D&D game at the end of the month, and I do my pre-Critical Role hype parties every week. So make sure you're following me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Luboffin. Okay, back to the soup of the episode. They arrive at the Clara house and wake up Layla to talk with her.
What the fuck, Auggie? You waking me up this time of night for what? To introduce me to all your well-dressed friends here? Is this a birthday? Is it my birthday? Is it my fucking birthday?
No,
Happy
it's
birthday to me.
fucking
What the fuck?
Look, I don't know anything about Layla, but I love her so much already, and I want to see her again. Auggie asks her about the fuel, and she says it was just some leftover stuff from work, but Charlotte picks up some dodgy vibes and leans on her to get more info. After some convincing coin, she lets her guard down somewhat and reveals that the scavengers she runs with will sometimes go below South Suffolk to the Old Farron ruins. She also reveals that she's done some work for a woman from the Alizarin Gallery. Alizarin Gallery, it's hard to say, who paid her to bring back any weird shit she finds. She had a deal with this woman that she could keep anything else she found, including fuel that Layla would then sell on to the foundries in the steel. She's been doing this for weeks now, but recently she found some more fuel made of the same material as the other stuff she'd found, but it had a sort of strange carvings or markings on it. It was one of these strange marked bits of fuel that she gave to Don, and she also gave some to the foundry. Layla shares a description of the woman at the gallery, and the group head off towards the steel via a cable car. A little further along from Donald's apartment, at another building, there is a crowd gathered, and the periphery are there taking out 2 bodies covered in sheets. Auggie asks another person what happened, who said that apparently they just found the bodies on the street, just like in the road. Charlotte then recognizes one of the periphery officers, Simon, who has visited the site unseen before, and he tells her that the bodies were found completely solidly frozen. While they are talking, another officer rushes up and says they have found another frozen body a couple of blocks away. They decide to continue heading onto the foundry in the hopes that it wasn't Donald, but maybe the spirit that was released from the fuel that did the murders. As they travel, Charlotte asks Howard if what they have seen is similar to what he has experienced in the past, and he says,
Somewhat. Bit more malevolent, if I were to classify it. Seems to be some sort of freewheeling spirit, less interested in torment and more interested in murder. I feel like that's fairly obvious. I just don't want to frighten the children.
Howard goes on to say that with the spirit he encountered, he was able to reason with it and appeal to it, but he gets the feeling that this one is not going to be so easy. I love all these little allusions to the characters' backstories and their encounters with the paranormal that led them to Candela. I'm really looking forward to learning more about them. I'm hoping we're going to get some more information in future episodes. We only have 2 more episodes with these characters though. Arlo uses her bleed detector and finds a thread of bleed between the bodies and a trail that leads to the Foundry. They arrive there just as someone runs out, yelling, covered in blisters and burns, yelling that there is something inside. Howard, despite being a PhD, not an MD, pulls out some salves and applies them to the man's burn wounds. From the inside, they can hear gunshots. Applying some safety goggles and safety gear, Howard leads on, and Auggie and Charlotte rush in to the place with the screams and the gunshots. Oh man, TTRPG characters are sometimes so dumb. Arlo stays outside and uses her bleed detector on the man, but she doesn't find any, and as she turns to enter the building to follow the others, she feels the air getting colder and colder, sees one of the smokestacks of the Foundry begin to ice over, and sees that the door into the building is completely iced over. She attempts to slam into the door to break the ice, but hits a spike of ice, cutting her hand.
A gash in it, that where it's open, you can see what would be exposed flesh. Instead, it looks almost like just a vacuous void of nothing beyond the torn skin.
Ew, what's that about? I don't like it. Trying a new tactic, Arlo instead commandeers an electric carriage or a car and drives into the doors, but Laura rolls 3 failures so she doesn't get the door fully open and takes some damage from ingots in the back of the carriage as they go hurtling forward. Meanwhile, inside, the others find 5 frozen bodies and a blue humanoid spirit begins to take shape, looking for warmth just as Donald did. Charlotte quickly lights a small fire to draw the attention of the spirit and it moves towards it, consuming it and snuffing the flames. However, the ghosts here are not the most dangerous threat. There is some other malevolent force that takes shape, and as Howard tries to pry open the door, it slams into him and he takes a bleed.
The strangest part is it's familiar. It harkens back to a memory from a year ago, and it fills me with guilt and revulsion and shame, and it affects my mind, which is one of the highest guarded place of me, and it's the worst experience.
You hear a voice ring through your mind. You fool! That memory strikes and you take a brain as well.
Oh no, you did it to yourself!
The shadow creature then disappears up to the 2nd floor. They all retreat outside for a moment, catching their breath, until Auggie returns back inside to search some of the crates of fuel that he noticed in the Foundry. He attempts to sneak in without drawing the attention of the spirit, but...
They're all ones.
Oh.
They're all ones.
All ones?
They're all ones.
All ones.
Can you use a resistance? Can you roll again?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes. Oh, yes.
Do it, Auggie, do it! Let's go!
That's my boy. Ah, that was a cut. That rolled over other dice.
It did.
That doesn't
It's a
seem
one.
fair.
The creature runs its spectral claws up Augie's body and he takes a bleed and a body harm. He falls to his knee, coughing up black liquid. Charlotte lights her scarf on fire and throws it into the room, distracting the spirit so that they can all rush to Auggie. Arlo uses her bleed detector to try and find the weird piece of fuel in the container. With a mixed success, she manages to find it, and it is an old and ancient artifact. But as she examines it, the arm of the spirit goes through her chest, but it hits her necklace, which is a ward item that can soak up 1 bleed. The really interesting thing about this game, and I think this is also a feature from Blades in the Dark, is that you don't pick your equipment ahead of time. You can pick from a list of equipment whenever you need it up to 3 times. So she obviously, had this moment realizing she was going to take a lot of bleed and picked the ward item. This causes the creature to retreat, giving them a little bit more time. Howard takes the artifact and examines it, noticing that there are grooves in it that seem to need to be filled by something. Arlo, thinking of Eddie. Eddie? Who's Eddie? Another mysterious person from her backstory. And she rubs some of her blood on it, and the blood runs into the carvings of the artifact and it begins to warm up, but it's not quite enough. As they all make to rush out, they get a better glimpse of the shadow entity.
You can now see it has a humanoid form. Its feet, its legs kind of drift into a long shadow tail, but you can almost see shoulders and a head, like armor you don't recognize. A warrior headdress that is multiple metallic-like quills that almost run off the back of its head. It looks like it is adorned in some sort of ceremonial battle gear that you've never seen before. And its kind of glowing eyes fit within the center of that shadow structure. and you see it kind of rise up from the center. Its jaw extends, its eyes go black, and the shadowed form becomes almost immaterial as it begins to dive through the mist in your direction.
Ooh, I'm really intrigued to learn more about this armor and sort of like warrior creature. Maybe this is like old tech from Old Fair, like a protector or something. Although later the Lightkeeper wonders if it was sort of more of a burial rite or a punishment for a spirit. As it is about to attack them, Charlotte cuts her hand and offers some more blood to the artifact, and as it rushes, they throw the artifact out on the ground. The runes glow brightly and red tethers appear out of it, wrapping around the creature and dragging it back into the capsule, into the artifact. Whew! Arlo wraps her jacket around it and they head outside as the OUP arrives on the scene. They manage to take a back exit and sort of sneak away. They take a back exit and head to the Gilded Rainbow bookstore, a Candela safe house. Lightkeeper Alexandra arrives and they hand over the artifact. She says that she'll pass it on to a group of researchers in Candela to see if they can ascertain more about what it could be. Candela Obscura runs a vault, like an interdimensional vault where they keep artifacts and phenomena, so I imagine that's where it's gonna go. That's called the Pharos Vault. Alexandra says they can have some time off before their next assignment, and Auggie is set up with a guest room here at the bookshop, so he doesn't need to scrounge for a place to sleep anymore. And with that, the assignment comes to a close and the group completes the end of game wrap up where they advance their circle and get access to some new resources. Arlo gets sewn up by Mr. Telbrook, who seems to think that Candela is a figment of Arlo's imagination. There is a very odd backstory there, I think, with Arlo, and I want to know more. And Auggie gets stitched up by a doctor at the Sight Unseen bar. Charlotte takes a few days away to visit a home in the Eaves, to visit an old lady who appears to be suffering from dementia or something similar. I will say I find it very intriguing that Charlotte's last name is Eaves and she is visiting the home of someone in the Eaves. Perhaps her family was like a founding rich family or something? I don't know. Mysteries upon mysteries.
Secrets at the outset. I like it.
A new setting means more lore conspiracy, so please let me know all of your theories about this new world and these new characters, and if you'd like to learn more about New Fair and the Country of Hail, check out my in-depth exploration of the setting right here. Bye!